A few stones in the center of Machu Picchu are over 50 tons. And you look at these single stones and see how perfectly they're fit.
What lies inside the newly found hidden chamber at Ollantaytambo is a nightmare for traditional history. These walls are made of red stone that is almost as hard as steel, yet they are carved into perfect shapes with smooth finishes.
The question, of course, is how could huge blocks like this be moved? And how could they be so precisely put together like this by a Bronze Age culture?
No one can explain how ancient workers moved these 50-ton giants across a wild river and up a 1,000-foot climb. Hands down, this is the most important discovery in Peru in the last 50 years. The evidence suggests that a forgotten group of master builders left these ruins behind for others to find later. Moving mountains. High in the sacred valley of Peru, sitting at 9,160 feet above the level of the sea, stands the massive fortress of Ollantaytambo. This place is famous for having some of the most perfect stonework in all of South America. The main focus is the Wall of the Six Monoliths, which are 6 giant red rocks. Each of these rocks weighs about 50 tons and stands over 13 feet tall. They fit together so tightly that you cannot even fit a small knife blade between the cracks. But here's the part that makes this feel impossible. These stones came from a place called Cachicata, which is on the other side of the Urubamba River. That is about 4 miles away and more than 1,000 feet higher up the mountain. Moving 50-ton blocks of red stone down a mountain, across a rushing river, and then back up another mountain using simple ropes and wood seems totally impossible. This stone is very hard, reaching a 6.5 or 7 on the hardness scale, which is like hardened steel. Yet, they stand there today with perfect edges and smooth faces. New surveys using lasers and special cameras have finally started to show the biggest secret of this site. The evidence shows that there were 2 very different times of building. The huge stones that make up the base are much older and better made than the smaller stones built around them. I'm not gonna lie, the most shocking part is that the people we call the Inca probably did not build the best parts. They found a half-finished site from an even older group of people and tried to finish it themselves. Their own stories even say this. They told the Spanish explorers about a first group of people whose skills were much higher than theirs. This site was a temple and a fort, and it was the spot where a famous leader named Manco Inca beat the Spanish in 1537. But the engineers are more interested in how the stones got there in the first place. These 6 red blocks are roughly 13 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and 4 feet thick. Some people think they might even weigh more than 50 tons. They are shaped into perfect rectangles with flat sides. Even after hundreds of years of wind, rain, and shaking ground, there are no gaps between them. The surfaces are not rough, but polished so smooth they look like they were made by a machine. There are no marks from hammers or chisels. It's been missing for years, but this key detail can shock anyone who looks closely at the ground. The real mystery starts when you look at how these massive rocks actually got across the valley. Forgotten founders. The normal story says that a leader named Pachacuti built this place between 1438 and 1471. The story claims they cut the rocks, moved them 4 miles over rough ground, and put them in place. But every part of that story has big problems. Red stone like this is very hard to work with. The ancient workers only had tools made of bronze, which is a mix of copper and tin. Bronze is much softer than this red stone. You cannot cut or grind this rock with bronze tools because the metal will just bend or break. It is a simple fact of science. Some people say they used harder river rocks to hit the red stone over and over again to shape it. This does work, but it leaves a very specific bumpy look on the stone. The giant rocks at Ollantaytambo do not have those bumps. Their faces are flat and smooth across the whole surface. Making them that smooth would take thousands and thousands of extra hours of work for every single stone. That much work does not make sense when you look at how many stones there are. New tests on the stone surface have found something very strange. The tiny crystals in the rock look like they were hit with high heat, maybe between 400 and 600 degrees. This is not enough to melt the stone, but it is enough to change how it behaves. Could the ancient builders have used heat to make the stone easier to carve? We really do not know. Local legends talk about using juice from special plants that could make stone soft like clay. Scientists have looked for proof of this, but they have not found any chemicals or recipes yet. The moving of the stones is just as confusing. To get from the quarry to the temple, the stones had to go down a steep slope, across a big river, and then up a long hill. Moving 50 tons down a mountain is very dangerous. Gravity wants to pull the stone down fast, and if a rope breaks, that stone becomes a giant crashing ball that would destroy everything and end many lives. Modern trucks use steel cables and big engines to do this. Thinking that ancient workers did it with plant ropes and wooden rollers is very hard to believe. Yet the stones are there, so they clearly made it across. The river is another big wall. The Urubamba River is wide and fast. To get across, they would need a bridge that could hold 50 tons or a very shallow path with a rock bottom. Surveys show the bottom of the river is not very good for moving heavy loads. Building a wood bridge for 50 tons would be one of the greatest engineering feats in history. The stones had to go up a 400-foot hill after crossing the water. Alien precision. The climb from the river to the temple terrace is steep. The usual idea is that hundreds of men pulled the stones with ropes using wooden sleds, but the math for this does not work out well. Even with a lot of people, the amount of power needed to pull 50 tons up a hill like that is right at the edge of what is possible. New three-dimensional laser scans have shown that the 6 giant rocks were not all cut at the same time. Looking at how the stone is worn down over time shows that some have been outside much longer than others. Some stones look like they have been there for 500 years, which matches the Inca, but others look like they have been there for 1,500 or even 2,000 years. This is based on how the minerals in the rock break down when they touch the air and rain. While these tests are not always perfect, the difference between the stones is huge. Either some stones had a very hard life or they were put there 1,000 years before the others. This points to a 3-step pattern of building at the site. The giant, perfect stones are at the bottom and form the core. Around them are smaller stones that are still good but not perfect. Then there are rough stones with gaps and tool marks that look like they were added last. This is actually the opposite of what usually happens in history. Normally, people start with rough work and get better over time. Here, the best work is the oldest, and the work gets worse as time goes on. This suggests that the later builders were trying to copy the older style but could not quite do it. The Spanish writers from the 1500s wrote down some amazing things. When they asked the locals who built the giant walls, some said they did not do it. They said the best stonework was done by the first people or by a creator who lived long ago. One writer named Pedro Cieza de Leon wrote that the Inca themselves were amazed by the stones. They wondered how any human could move them. Another writer of royal blood said the Inca just took care of ancient buildings that they did not know how to build. Most modern experts ignore these stories and say they are just myths. They use carbon dating to say the site is from the 1400s. But carbon dating only works on things that were once alive, like wood or bone. It does not tell you when a rock was carved. If the Inca were just fixing up an old site, the dates would only show their work. Sacred legacy. Many of the best stones have no glue or mortar between them. They stay together because of their shape and weight. Glue only shows up on the rougher stones that were added later. This suggests the giant blocks were put there dry and later people filled in the gaps. There are also strange bumps on many of the stones. People thought these were for ropes, but they show no signs of being pulled on. Maybe they were just for looks, or maybe the Inca added them because they saw them on older stones and thought they were important. The stones that never made it to the site tell a sad story. Along the path from the quarry, there are several huge blocks that were just left behind. One weighs 70 tons and is stuck halfway down the mountain. These were not dropped or broken, they were being carved and then just stopped moving. Most people think work stopped when the Spanish arrived, but the wear on these rocks suggests they were left there much earlier. It looks like the Inca tried to move their own giant stones but realized they just could not do it. The abandoned rocks show the point where they gave up. At the temple, it looks like everyone just walked away in the middle of a job. Some stones are perfect, and right next to them are rough blocks that were never finished. This same pattern of sudden stopping is found all over Peru. It looks less like a war stopped the work and more like the builders realized the task was too hard. Another weird thing is how sound moves in the temple. Voices are very clear and certain sounds ring out while others stay quiet. This might be on purpose. Modern sound experts say it would be hard to build a room like this today without high-tech tools. Did the builders understand how sound waves work? We do not know, but the result is incredible. The water systems are also top-notch. Stone channels move water from the mountains through the fort perfectly. They are tilted just right so the water does not sit still or move too fast and cause damage. This took a lot of planning and math. The farming terraces are also great pieces of engineering. They stop the soil from washing away and have layers of sand and gravel to handle the rain. Whether one group built all of this or many groups added to it is still a big debate. But the physical evidence shows that there was a master group of builders who lived long before the Inca. Maybe they were from a culture called Tiwanaku, which was famous for great stonework near Lake Titicaca. The Inca said they came from those people. But Tiwanaku has its own mysteries that are just as hard to explain. The history of the Andes Mountains is very long, going back 10,000 years. Many great cultures rose and fell. It is very likely that one of them figured out how to work with stone in a way that was later lost. The giant stones of Ollantaytambo are proof that we do not know the whole story. The idea that everything was built in a few decades by a group with bronze tools does not fit the facts. These rocks show a level of skill that is hard to wrap our heads around. The biggest secret is that the people we think built the ancient world were actually just the ones who found it and tried to keep it going. This does not make the Inca less amazing, but it shows that human history has many peaks and valleys. Knowledge is not always a straight line. Sometimes it is found and then lost for a long time. These stones challenge us to think differently about what ancient people could really do. Could an ancient culture have possessed technology that we still don't understand today? If the Inca didn't build the most perfect parts of Ollantaytambo, then who did? Leave a comment with your theory and don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries.